Yeah, we are back with Mandi Henriod with Wise Home Lending, and let's jump into the market. Where are rates, and are we holding or are we locking?
Oh,
Or-
Lord. I mean, 2 days ago, like it was like lock, 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 lock. Right now, the damage has kind of been done. We're hoping to get a rebound. So we're holding for a minute.
Okay.
But everybody, pray
Gosh,
to the loan gods with me because it's been a rough few days.
And so what are you watching to determine whether you're locking or holding?
So that is the hard thing that people don't realize is it's, when I went to school and got a degree, you were looking at the job market and you're looking at inflation and you're looking at goods, cost of goods, things like that, right? Those are the things that you're watching as an indicator. Those are all still players on the field, but now you get to add to it media, political voices, political battles, you name it, right? So there's so much impacting and it can move at a moment's notice. And I think that's a lot of consumers don't realize that like their rate this morning might not be the rate this afternoon. So the thing I would say is if you're in the middle of financing, you have, and know this, you have to have an application in. Your loan officer has to have a working file to lock. They can't just lock out of the air. So if you have an active loan going on and you hear a rate that you're like, okay, I can live with that, in the current market, you should probably just lock.
Yeah. Otherwise, Twitter's going to go off and change your rate.
Right. That is the hard thing, right? It's become really unpredictable.
Yeah.
Earlier this week, CPI numbers came in actually in our favor. The market didn't get better.
Yeah.
It should have, but because of all of the other narratives going on, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so today I want to talk about when does it actually make sense to rent versus buy. So, I mean, I'm a real estate broker.
Yeah.
Mortgage. We obviously want people to own homes, and my opinion is, yeah, you should own a home. But today I do want to talk about
why do you believe that? Let's talk about that. Because it's not. I know you. It's not just because it's tied to your paycheck. Right. I know you.
Yeah, so I think that there's probably three things that I look at. The first one that I say, it's the only way you can lock in essentially what you pay for your housing long term. So go look at all the data. Rent goes up. Historically, it's going to go up 3% per year. The cost to buy a home typically also goes up. The mortgage line we use is 4%, or the value line we use is 4%.
Yeah.
So whether you're renting, whether you're buying, your 3 to 4%, it's every single year that your cost is rising for housing.
Absolutely.
And so for me, like, it's lock in. I remember going back, and this will seem cheap, but like when I bought my townhome, it was $200,000, and that was the first time that my payment was ever going to go over $1,000 a month, and I was sick to my stomach.
Yeah.
And that wasn't even that long ago. I mean, almost 10 years.
But we're young, it's fine.
Yeah.
10 years is nothing.
But in a 10-year period, right, if I had chose to continue to rent, it's more than double.
I was saying, what are the options for renting under $1,000 right now? Right.
Well, and honestly, that exact same townhome, I get right about $2,500 a month for it. And what's crazy is that wasn't even something that I said. Yeah. When I had my open house for the rental, someone actually said, if you'll do it today, I'll pay you $2,500. And it was kind of like, I mean, that was what the market was when I rented it. And that was actually 3 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I haven't raised the rent. And so I look at that of like, oh, that was just in a 10-year period. So that's my first one. The next one would be the wealth creation. Mm-hmm. So just flat out, it's tough to save money, especially when you have inflation. Right. And so for me, one of the cool things about being a homeowner, honestly, we got to ride the inflation. And so when everything went up, so did the value of my home, so did the net worth. And so like there is no way that I would have been able to save from my monthly income the amount of wealth I've created from equity from my primary residence and my rental properties.
I think that's just it. I mean, I'm diligent about putting a percentage of my income into savings and retirement things, those vehicles, and I will tell you, I could not have saved the amount that I've gained
Yeah,
in appreciation of my
I
property.
mean, I definitely, like, I have a portfolio as well, right? And my value of my real estate portfolio is way outperforming.
Right.
But even at that, like my first rental property that I bought, it was that forced savings. It was like, okay, I need to do something because someday I want to retire.
Yeah.
And like looking at the value of that, that was also about 10 years ago, and that one's doubled
Right.
in value since I bought it. And so, like, just looking at that, and then the last one is just honestly a little bit of stability. Of like, I actually love moving. I would move every
Really?
single year to a new house, get a new group of people to get to know. But definitely, with having kids, like,
Yeah.
it's tough to have to go. I did move a couple times when I was growing up, and it was tough to make new friends, and it was tough to go into different areas, switch schools,
Yeah.
and so I think, just being able to start growing that community of being able to have someone that, like, okay, I'm going away for the week. Like, can you watch my house? And I actually trust them to watch the house.
Yeah, I would say, like, as a mother, right, when my kids were young, like being able to go, oh my gosh, I'm stuck on the freeway in a traffic jam. Can you pick up my kid when you're picking up your kid, right? Yeah. There's a lot of value in that community, that stability, especially for families.
Yeah. And so those would be kind of and then the other thing is, I guess the last one I would say is just the freedom to, I mean, if I want to paint a wall or hang a TV or whatever, know that I can do that. And in 6 months, I'm not going to have to fix everything that,
right.
I mean, I have projects
put it back to an original state.
Right. I have projects that are taking years, right? Like, and they're fun. I mean, I go tinker with things.
I was going to say, I think house projects, once you own a home, that's just a standard. I had that conversation with a client last night who was like, just went under contract, and they're so excited, and we're like, they're doing this and this and this and this. And I was like, okay, remember, Rome was not built in a day.
Right.
But yeah, it's a constant.
Yeah, but I mean, we did have, so we had a rental that we had lived in about 2.5 years, and it was sold. Like, it was, hey guys, like, love you to death, but we're selling. And so that was something that we had to uproot the family without
it being your choice, right? And I'm running into that a lot right now, where I have a lot of clients right now who are being forced to make decisions because whoever owns their property that they've been renting is making a change, whether it's that they're moving back into the property, we're seeing some of that, or they're trying to sell and liquidate that asset. So that's another reality. I have a lot of clients right now who are like, we weren't planning on doing this, and so we don't have a down payment saved up. Coming up with our earnest money is a big deal, right? And they are not in control.
Right, and especially if you've went to a month-to-month lease, they only have to give you 30 days notice, right? And so, like, 30 days is not a lot of time to plan to go find another house, whether it's a rental or buying.
Right.
And
it almost forces you into another rental.
Right.
Because if you weren't mapping out your forward motion towards owning a home, it makes it hard.
And then if you did have kids that drew on the wall or whatever else, like, all of a sudden it's like, oh, in the next 30 days, I've got to come up with an extra $1,000 to take care of all the little dings and dents. And so just kind of that like security of, this is mine. I don't have to go anywhere. Like, I'm not going to have the surprise. Like, oh, guess what? We're moving in a month.
Yeah.
And there's no other rentals available in our neighborhood. So
or rent is now,
50%
higher than when we started. Yeah. I think that's absolutely true. So, but let's talk about this, because the thing that we were talking about earlier is we do have some clients that we're having to have the hard conversation of, like, today, your better option might be to rent.
Right.
Right? And what creates that?
Yeah, and I think, so let's talk about kind of the choice first of just, hey, I want more flexibility, right? Kind of the opposite of, hey, I want to settle down. It's like, maybe you are, it's like, I'm going to live here 1 month and then I'm going to try somewhere else.
Or I know for a fact I'm only here for the next 2 years because my game plan puts me somewhere else in the country, right?
Yeah, so if you still need the flexibility, and I guess, do you have a timeline where you're like, hey, if you're not going to stay at least this long, it makes sense.
And or you don't want to keep that property and turn into a landlord, right? Because I would still argue, if you have a big picture goal to own multiple properties, great. Even if you move, there's property management companies that do a great job of taking care of things, even if you are somewhere else. So, but say that is just not on your list. You don't want to do that. You don't want to be a landlord. I do run into that. Very honestly, I'm that myself. The thought of being a landlord, I think I'd be the worst landlord ever, because people would call me and be like, I would go broke doing it because I'm too much of a softie. But so say that isn't in your goal, you don't want to do that, right? Then if you're not going to keep a property for 2 years, it may not make sense to buy, because there are expenses to buying and to selling. Right? And so you kind of do need that time to gain the equity that would wash out those expenses, I would think.
Right. Especially, I would say, in a market like we're in right now, right, where we're not seeing crazy appreciation that's running up, and really no end in sight of like the interest rates coming down and prices going up. Like, I think we're in this market for a little bit. So buying it thinking you're going to have 10% appreciation in a year to cover all the costs of going in and going out, like, you're 2, 3, 4 years. But if you are planning on keeping it, right? I think the other time is if you're relocating to a new area, like, it's okay to rent for a year and figure out where you want to live. Especially
if you're coming in, you know nothing about the area, right? You know nothing about the neighborhoods. I mean, sometimes our clients are coming in and they have family here, they've come here for vacation, they're somewhat familiar, that's one thing. But I agree, like, if you just know nothing about the area that you're moving to, you may want to take a minute and get to know neighborhoods and communities to determine where you want to land.
Well, and so we rented a home actually in Sugar House, and I loved the neighbors, I loved the area, but it was a little bungalow, and I'm so glad that we didn't buy that.
Because raising a family in those little bungalows.
It would have been tough. The age of it, I mean, we had a kitchen table about the size of that. And so, like, I'm glad we didn't buy that house. And so, like, I would have never known that, because I always wanted to move up, and live closer to typically where I've worked. And it's like, no, we'd rather the commute and be able to have a little bit newer and bigger home than buying it. But without that year experience, we wouldn't have known. So I think, again, if you don't know the area, you want to try out an area, or if you're moving in from out of state, absolutely makes sense to rent for a year. What else?
I would say affordability. So this is a thing, I am a big softie. I actually really care. If somebody wants to own a home, if that is their goal, I will help you get there. But there is also the reality that if your budget is, I can only afford $900 a month, we have to get real about what is possible as far as ownership here in Utah. At $900 a month, there really isn't anything available. I did find a property in Kenosha yesterday at $85,000, right? But if you know anything about Utah, like, Kenosha's middle of nowhere, you're not going to have medical services or whatever. So I do think there's that moment where we have to have real conversations and go, this might not be the market for you. Now, I help clients all over the country. And if you can move anywhere and your job isn't holding you here, like, for $80,000, you can own a single family residence in Alabama. You just have to go live in Alabama. You can't live in Salt Lake City, Utah. Right? So I do think we have to be really real with our clients up front on things like that. Now, having said that, especially with my young clients, I am not above going, you want to own someday. Here's, let's map out a plan, because you're probably going to need a different job. What's your career path? How do we help you map towards those items? Because you're going to have to earn more to afford more. Right? It's simple math.
It really is. And I think if we look back over history, right now feels very unaffordable, right? It felt very unaffordable in the 80s.
Totally.
And so
I remember my first home that my husband and I bought. I mean, very honestly, we for like a year didn't buy each other gifts. We didn't celebrate an anniversary. We were so scared because it felt so unaffordable. We literally, if you're old enough to remember this or know what this is, do you know the paper coin holder things that you would take to the bank and you would stack your coins and load it in these paper circles? That's how we came up with our down payment, digging change out from under
That's amazing.
my husband's car seat, right?
Yeah.
It felt super unaffordable.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
and yet here we are all these years
right.
later.
And so we will have markets that are up and down, and there will be times when it's more affordable.
Right.
Whether that's because of interest rates, whether it's because of a housing correction, or, I was having a discussion with my dad, and it was just like, well, we're in this period where wages haven't caught up.
Yep.
And so at some point, wages will come up it will outpace, at least, history has said it will outpace the appreciation of a home and then or the payments of the home. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, we can now afford a home again.
Right.
I think it's important to our government. I mean, so are there government programs that all of a sudden are rolled out that make it more affordable? And so there is sometimes that just timing, you may have to wait just because of your
there's
wage
just gaps,
versus
right?
Right.
In the past, we've had things like city grants, and there's still some of those, but the wage limit tied to those is at a mark that if your wages fit under that mark, you can't afford a home. So nobody actually fits in the box. At some point, those programs will update. They will start to adjust to what is real in the market, right? A lot of things will cycle back in.
Yep. And then the next one I would say is if you have some instability in your life. So if you're brand new into a job, or maybe brand new into an industry, or you're in an industry that is seeing a lot of layoffs or cuts, right? So if there's any instability around really your employment, that's one that I would probably say, hey, go ahead and rent. Let's make sure this is going to work out.
Right. Because the one thing you don't want to do is lose a house, right? Foreclosing on a house, you'll survive, you'll come back from it, don't get me wrong. But also, it's a bigger hit than, if you are renting and you just have to make some hard choices there.
Yep.
The impact to your credit is much different for foreclosure.
Right. And then I would say even kind of on that, if there's instability in your personal life, I've seen people that are literally were buying the home to try to save their marriage.
Yes, all the time.
And it
always goes badly.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's surprising how much we see that of really common. Moving in and buying this home. And we usually hear back roughly 8 months later
that they're splitting and now they need to figure out that piece. So yes.
So
that is.
Make sure the person that you're buying the home with, and even if it's, hey, I'm buying it with a friend, make sure that.
Is your friend about to go get married? Right?
Right.
And now you're going to be on your own. Yeah.
So just make sure whoever you're buying it with, that you're on good terms. And if it's not a marriage, if it's a friendship or things like that, go through the prenup process of what happens if we have life changes and we have to sell or we get in financial trouble, right? So just making sure we know that up front.
And think about it, right? If you're in that scenario, so one of the things we always ask our clients is, obviously as a lender, I can tell you what you can qualify for, but what are you comfortable with? So in those scenarios, really think that through. If we're doing this, we're really trying, we're going to make this relationship work. We believe we're going to get there, but if we didn't, can I manage this payment, right? Be really realistic about those items.
Yep. Okay. Any other times that you can think of when it makes more sense to rent than buy?
Sometimes there are times when we're working on credit with a client
that
we will say, hey, listen, where you are today versus where you can be 12 months from now is vastly different. You should rent while we do these things. Again, as a team, we really believe in helping people with home ownership. If you want to own a home, we want to help you get there. But you can't spend years not paying your bills and expect to fix your credit in 90 days, right? It is a process that takes some time. So in those scenarios, we will often tell our clients, hey, listen, you need to find a place to live for the next 12 months. We're going to give you the to-do list. We're going to talk once a month about that. But in the meantime, you have to have you can't be like, I'm trying to buy tomorrow.
Yep. Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions about buying versus renting, definitely feel free to reach out. We'd love to answer any questions that you might have.